Before my ex-wife destroyed my life with her infidelity, we were so happy together, and I never believed a day would come where I would have to share this story. When I first met Maria, I instantly knew she was the woman I had been looking for. I had been single for almost 2 years and was still getting over the pain of my ex-girlfriend dumping me for another woman. Trust me, this type of pain hits differently. I won't say our marriage was too different from our dating years. The only difference was moving in together and raising a daughter together. The first few months of our marriage were not as blissful as most people described. I had to do many things like cleaning, grocery shopping, doing the dishes, laundry, and even tolerating her annoying mood swings because of her pregnancy. And although I enjoyed being a father and a husband, it was very stressful. Our daughter, Daisy, grew up pretty fast, and in a twinkle of an eye, she was 4 already. I don't believe in magic, but it felt like magic because everything happened so fast. And I couldn't even remember how she moved from crying all night to picking the color of her nail polish. Meanwhile, Maria and I still lived happily with each other, and we were both fantastic parents to Daisy. As Daisy got older, she spent most of her time with Maria, and I only got to spend time with her on my days off. On one of those days, I took Daisy to the park to play with our dog and do whatever she wanted. So after playing, she came back to take a pack of juice, and just beside us, 2 couples were making out and almost kissing their thumbs out. I wasn't even paying attention to the couple, and my eyes were fixed on my phone screen. So when Daisy started giggling, I had to look up and see what was making her laugh. When I asked her why she was laughing, she whispered that the 2 couples looked like Mummy and her boyfriend, which made me curious. I pressed to know what she was talking about, and after playing everything in her childish way, I knew something was not right. Everything Daisy told me insinuated that Maria had been seeing someone else, and they made out even in Daisy's presence. Another thing was the man Daisy described was someone I knew. He was also close to my wife and visited our house a lot. I asked Daisy multiple times if she was sure what she said, and she said I could even ask her mother myself. So to avoid blowing up my discovery, I told Daisy not to tell Maria about our discussion, and she promised not to. Even without getting proof, I changed how I looked at Maria, and she could tell I acted a bit cold toward her. The thing is, I could not believe that Maria, who looks so innocent, assured me that she loved me and never did anything fishy would cheat on me. It was difficult for me, but I struggled to hold it in and not confront her until I did what I wanted. Days after I found out Maria was having her affair, I set up a dash cam in Reyes's car and hid it very well. I wanted to be sure of everything Daisy told me before taking action, and low-key, I hoped Daisy was just making stories up. To my greatest surprise, after Maria drove out of the house with Daisy that weekend, she stopped and picked up her boyfriend, and it was the same man Daisy described. He used to be her landlord before we got married and moved in together. And even though I noticed they were close, I thought they were just friends and nothing more, but to my horror, it was more than that. Immediately, he got into the car, and Maria leaned in to kiss him passionately. And when they were done, he turned to the back seat to playfully scatter Daisy's hair, and they drove off. I was so disappointed that I didn't know what to do next. I felt my whole world crash. I struggled to believe that Maria was the person in the car. After my minutes of emotional breakdown, it turned to rage, and an idea popped into my head. Still, when Maria came home that evening, I didn't confront her or anything. I simply told her I was going for a walk to clear my head. Meanwhile, I was so sad and heartbroken, to avenge her for cheating on me and breaking my heart. I did some research and found the girlfriend of Maria's boyfriend. She had met me physically several times, and we barely chatted on Facebook. Without holding back, I told her everything I found out and showed her the footage of Maria and her fiancé. She was heartbroken because she had been dating her boyfriend for 4 years, and was engaged for 1 year, yet he cheated on her. She felt so betrayed and broke off the engagement. After she did, I confronted my wife. At first, she denied having an affair with her boyfriend and called me delusional. But after she watched the footage, she was speechless. I was also brilliant and insisted on a paternity test, and the results showed Daisy was my biological daughter. She tried to beg me and explained that those were just friendly kisses and nothing more, but she must have thought I was stupid. I told her we were divorcing and I would take full custody of our daughter or expose her videos to her friends and family if she disagreed. At first, she relented, and although it was hard in court, because she was a good mother, but because of all the evidence I presented to the court, I won child custody for Daisy, and she only got to see Daisy on weekends. I even thought Mariah and her boyfriend would take their relationship to the next level, especially since they had no reason to hide anymore. But they broke up shortly after their secret was exposed. Her parents eventually found out, and they were so disappointed in her. It's been years now, and I know Daisy has been telling her stories of how me and my new girlfriend are taking care of her. As for my new girlfriend, we figured we were all we had after our spouses cheated on us and broke our trust. It sounds petty to date her boyfriend's former girlfriend, but it happened, and we are so happy together. We are not in a rush to get married, and I'm glad she loves and treats Daisy as her child. This is a great way to move and show your ex how dumb and wicked she was to cheat on you. I'm glad you're happy, and you handled this situation as a strong man. Your ex-wife did not deserve a second chance, and I'm glad you weren't blinded by your emotion. Thank you for sharing your story with us. Now let's move on to the next story of the day. Fooling me. First, I'll admit that I loved my wife so much. And even when I noticed signs that she was acting edgy or dressing extra, I didn't consider most of it. My wife and I first met at a mutual friend's housewarming party and clicked instantly. We had a couple of conversations, talked about regular things, what she loved, and what I loved, and she was very free-spirited. She laughed at almost every joke, which I found beautiful and attractive. I also loved that she was not acting like she was out of my league like the rest of her friends did. And after we had a great time together, we went our separate ways. But before we did, we exchanged contacts, and I called her as soon as I got home that evening. We didn't talk much that first night because she went to a different location to hang out with her friends, but the next day, we talked and flowed like old-time friends. I won't lie, I wasn't single when I met my wife. My relationship was complicated, and I was going through so much with my then-girlfriend. I was tired of her lies, her deception, and always playing the victim in situations she made, which was exhausting for me. So when my then-girlfriend asked that we break up, I didn't argue with her. I did this because I was already close friends with my wife, and she looked like the kind of woman that would give me the long-lasting peace I wanted, and I was right. My wife gave me the kind of peace, love and respect I wanted, but it was short-lived. After I officially broke up, my wife was there to comfort me and spend time with me whenever she wanted to. She was a freelance graphic designer, and this gave her the flexibility to work from anywhere. I'd even invite her for the weekends, and she would work from my place. And whenever she was taking a break, we go out and have fun. As of that time, she was single and was looking to have fun. Aside from her two friends I met at the housewarming party, she didn't have other friends and didn't have much of a social life. So we became best friends, and in no time, we were madly in love with each other. Even without officially asking her out, we were almost inseparable and went everywhere together all the time. You all might call it obsession, but it wasn't. I had been yearning for a woman I could connect with and not feel insecure. And I found that in my wife. We introduced each other to our parents, and my parents loved her. She was my maternal grandmother's namesake, creating a beautiful bond between. Despite her earning more than I did, I still took care of her. We dated for 2 years. Those were the most memorable moments we had together. We traveled to different countries, mainly for sightseeing, and took 2 proper vacations within those 2 years. While we dated, my love for her and my gifting increased. On our first anniversary, I felt we were ready to take things to the next level. So I asked her to move in with me and she was glad to. Her parents even suggested that she move in with me at the early stage of our relationship so we could get to know each other, but she refused and said she didn't want to rush things. I literally did not hold back anything from my wife, nothing at all. I loved her wholeheartedly and did everything to make her happy. Her happiness was my priority, and I adored everything about her. I believe we were on our way to the happily ever after life, but I was very mistaken. After 2 years of dating and 1 year of living together, I popped the question. She said, yes. We have a small wedding, invited our friends and family, and had a great time. We didn't need to move into a bigger apartment, so we stayed at my old house. We didn't do 5050 responsibility, but she contributed to it. I took care of rent, gas, and utility bills, and she took care of groceries. Remember that I mentioned at the beginning of my story that there was a time I noticed some things were off with my wife, but I didn't pay much attention to it. Well, that started after a year in her marriage. She just changed, and I could not explain why. On some days, she would be happy and all nice. The next day, she would be so cold and ignore me like we didn't live in the same house. Then she started going out more and more from being someone who didn't have friends and a solid social life. I would often return from work, and she would leave a note that said she was out to see her friends or hang out with other freelancers that lived in our city. The truth is I was happy that she was even socializing more, and I didn't really ask detailed questions whenever she returned from her meetings. As time passed, I noticed she started caring more about her looks, applying makeup and wearing skin-tight skimpy clothes. I was a bit concerned about the skimpy clothes she wore. And each time I talked about it, she would say I was being insecure, and I didn't like that. She was exploring different options. I didn't like it when she said that, so I stopped mentioning it and allowed her to do her thing. She even started staying late whenever she went out in the evenings, and I felt she needed to unwind after sitting in front of her laptop for hours. Our bond as husband and wife also became weaker as all of this continued. And most times, she wouldn't let me touch her because she claimed she was always tired. Trying to be an understanding husband, not knowing that my wife was cheating on me. It was until one day, we were both sitting in the living room, and she mentioned something about having insufficient space on her phone, and I advised her to clean her phone. As she was doing that in a short glance at her screen, I noticed she recently deleted a dating app, and I was curious. I tried to hold myself together and pretended I did not see everything. Later that evening, after giving her a hot dose of my husband's duties, she slept off, and I used her fingerprint to unlock her phone as she slept. I re-downloaded the app, and because her details were registered with Google, I got signed in immediately. I didn't even dig deep when I found out that my wife had been dating one not-so-fine guy for almost a year, and he had seen me a couple of times. I read all of their romantic conversations, and I was heartbroken to see that they mocked me whenever they talked, and said many nasty things about me. I was so enraged and even thought of giving my wife a peaceful sleep, but I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in jail. So I pretended to chat with him like it was my wife, and invited her boyfriend to join us for Christmas dinner in a few days, so he could meet my family, still pretending to be my wife. I told him I would travel, so we would have the whole evening to ourselves. After he agreed, I deleted the app, charged my wife's phone, and pretended all was well. In fact, I acted happier than I was the previous days, and she believed I was excited about Christmas. Long story short, on Christmas Eve, he arrived at my in-laws' home, and it was my turn to make a fool out of them. I knew the exact time he would come and open the door for him. The shock on his face was worth framing, and I pretended I didn't know him. When my wife saw him, she dropped the tray food she was holding, and her parents suspected something was wrong. Her parents didn't know him either, but he was invited to the table to eat with us. As I ate, I began talking about a friend who recently found out his wife was cheating on him on a dating app, and he was mad and to force her. I made the story so emotional. Her parents even said the lady did not deserve a second chance, and her husband did the right thing by divorcing her. While I told the story, it was evident that my wife was finding it difficult to chew and swallow the fruit in her mouth. And she was sweating profusely. Her boyfriend kept touching the collar of his shirt, and it was evident that he was uncomfortable too. After beating around the bush, I told her parents that their daughter was cheating on me with the man she invited for dinner, and her parents questioned her. And they were so furious when they confirmed it. They embarrassed her boyfriend without wasting time and kicked him out of their house. Then they rained abuse on my wife and they expressed their disappointment. I'm glad she will have to live with her parents' disappointment for the rest of her life and she has no place in my life anymore. She tried to defend herself and said she did it because I was getting boring, and I did everything she wanted without complaints. Hearing this made her parents more furious, and they asked her to find somewhere else to sleep that day. I was so shattered that she could repay me that way, and I left their house. Later on, we divorced, and I have not seen her since. It's funny how you pour your heart out for a woman, care for her and love her unconditionally. In the end, she takes advantage of that. Right now, I'm not ready for a relationship, and it might take a while to heal. There's no need to hold on to the past. You need to move on. You have so much life to live and things to explore. Your act sounds crazy, and I think you dodged a bullet. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I hope you were able to heal from this. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.